what was it like going from Disney to this?
So in this video, you have a child who sounds like they could be as young as 5, asking Zendaya, who is an actress, about her transition from acting on shows on Disney to a show like Euphoria, which on the surface sounds like a really good question. But the concern is Euphoria is a R-rated show.
I'd like each of you to get up and tell us a 5-minute story about your summer.
Euphoria debuted in 2019 and is essentially a coming-of-age TV show that follows a group of students as they struggle with drugs, love, and social media. The show encompasses drug abuse, violence, drug addiction, sexual themes, and sexual abuse. Essentially a show that you wouldn't assume a child would be watching, and as you can imagine, Zendaya is shocked by this.
Please tell me you were not in here for this. Oh my God.
This is a really awkward situation because she now has to accept, at the very least, that there's a child out there that has watched her engage in explicit scenes. There's no better way of absolving yourself from responsibility than blaming someone else.
Your parents are responsible. Okay. Woo!
Now, I am not trying to blame Zendaya or attack her in any way, but I think it makes complete sense that she would have really young fans, especially when she's come from a platform like Disney. Also, this video highlights the fact that children are exposed to explicit content, and we can blame parents, blame the actors, blame society, but it doesn't change the reality that children are watching. When you hear or see the word model, you may think of a runway model such as Naomi Campbell or Kendall Jenner. But from a social learning perspective, a model is a person behind the act that we desire to imitate. So essentially the person doing the act. The reason why the model is so important in this is because there's a reason why the individual's chosen to imitate this specific individual. It's very rare that you ask someone who your role model is and they say, oh, just a random person on the street. It's usually someone of sentiment or someone with high value or that we admire a great deal. Of course, role models are not limited to celebrities, but they tend to be honoured in a way or exalted in a way where more people are likely to imitate them or follow them, and so they're more likely to be labelled as a role model because of the vast amount of people that look up to them. Like, for instance, I might see my mum as a role model, but that's probably just going to be me and my siblings. Like, not a lot of people are also going to agree with me, whereas someone like Beyonce, there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be like, yeah, I look up to her, or yeah, I want to be like her, or whatever values or, behaviours or things that she's accomplished that these people would also like to imitate. Social learning theory is a sect of psychology or philosophy that people can learn from each other through observation, imitation, and modelling. The concept was theorised by psychologist Albert Bandura, and it combines the ideas of behaviourist perspective and cognitive learning approaches. I think it's important to look through the lens of this theory as it highlights that people learn through modelling. Social learning theory has 4 stages of process. So the first stage is attention. This is what you choose to observe. So for example, you love football, you put the football on, you're watching Ronaldo and he does a bicycle kick. So this action in itself is called the stimuli or the stimulus, and it's what you choose to observe. The second stage is retention, so your ability to internalize or choose to remember, and that's why cognitive processing is an element of social learning theory, because it's, how much your brain is able to retain of what you've chosen to observe or you've seen or you've watched on TV or anything, just from your observation, what have you been able to remember from that? The third stage is motor reproduction. So this is your ability to repeat the behavior or imitate it through your action. For instance, I can watch Ronaldo do the bicycle kick 1,000 times. I will not be able to imitate it because I just cannot. So obviously this stage is really important. The final stage is motivation. So is it behavior you care to repeat? Is it important for you to repeat it? And usually this is generated by the success. So if someone does that behavior and they get great applause and praise, you're most likely to want to imitate it. But if that behavior is received negatively, you probably won't want to imitate that behavior. The good thing about this theory is that although it highlights learning through observation and imitation, it does recognize that it's the person has a will essentially to do that, to repeat that action or to imitate that action. It's not that we're a blank canvas or a robot and we see an action and we're like, we have to do it. But there is a kind of decision being made, a cognitive process where it's like you either want to or you don't want to. You can go forward with repeating that action or you can reject it.
I know what I like. And I know you know what I like because you were trained to know what I like. But I would like to know what you like. For instance, do you have a favorite food?
Yes.
Good! What is your favorite food?
Whatever food you like.
It is important to know that it is adults who have a much more extensive cognitive functioning, so they are more likely to filter out observed behaviours. This is not the same with children who have a limited schema, which is their mental framework, due to their limited experiences. This is also a critique of Bandura's experiment because he uses children who are a lot more impressionable to complete his study. However, the study did show that children who saw the Bobo doll treated aggressively were a lot more likely to copy this behaviour, subsequently concluding in the study that behaviour could be learned through observation. Of course, this is not an exclusive way that people learn or adopt behaviour, but it does show that observation can contribute to learned behaviour. A good cultural example of how children learn by observing models is the young toddlers that went viral dancing to Rich Baby Daddy by Drake. Drake is a Canadian rapper that released a song called Rich Baby Dad featuring SZA and Sexy Red. The song is essentially about a sexual rendezvous with someone that has a lot of money, perpetuating this idea that it's better to have a baby with someone that's extremely rich. It references sex and utilizes explicit language, arguably inappropriate for children to be listening to. I know someone's going to try and justify the song, but let's just be honest, like the song is actually quite graphic and inappropriate for children. This video did generate a lot of backlash about what children are listening today and what they're watching. However, on the other side, some people are arguing that, look, the children didn't know what the lyrics meant. They were just saying what the lyrics were saying, even though they didn't understand the meaning and they were just having fun. And when the swear words did come up, the children were skipping them. And look, I was a child once, so I do get that perspective. But at the same time, I feel like the songs growing up used a lot of innuendos and there was a lot of clean versions that a lot of us didn't even know was the clean version. Also, you've got to remember that back then, music just wasn't easily accessible. It wasn't accessible as it is today. Like, you had to listen to music at a certain time, or inappropriate songs would come up on a certain time. You wouldn't hear it on the radio. And I know that there are clean versions now, but you can just easily search the song on YouTube and find the original version. There have been many questionable videos in the last few years that would have horrified the masses 40, 50, even 20 years ago. A few that came to mind for me were Kanye West's Fade, Nicki Minaj, Anaconda, and Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball. Are these just our reflection of the uncensored society or the promotion of the individual society where we're just in for ourselves? In other words, is it my job or responsibility to filter myself for your child? Once upon a time, the village or community came together to raise a child. So we all played a part in how a child was brought up and raised. But arguably now it is solely the individual, so the immediate family's responsibility to raise that child. And this creates a route for the parent to be blamed if, for instance, a child is watching inappropriate content. It's the parent's fault. But my issue with this is that it removes responsibility from the model. Though I refer to Bandura's study, I don't think you have to be Einstein to realise that children copy and imitate other people. And though I agree that you're not the child's parent, celebrities are aware that they are role models to children. They know children often make up a huge percentage of their fan base, and they lean into this at times. And then they're the first ones to say, well, they're not responsible for any children. Also, I understand that we were all children once. We all watched things we shouldn't have or snuck things behind our parents' back. However, there was a lot more censorship, which is what I'm going to speak about. There were not as many streaming platforms that make things easily accessible, where you can just watch what you want to watch all the time, whenever you want to, evening or night, morning or day. If there were, they were not that accessible. I can't imagine what parents are battling today. I remember there were clean versions of songs. I just found out literally just a few years ago that the Dream song Rockin' That Thing was the clean version, because where was I going to come across the inappropriate version? Shows like Family Guy that were clearly geared towards adult audiences, they came on in the evening. Like in the UK, we had this channel called BBC Three, which was quite just basically geared towards adults, but it would only start streaming from 7 o'clock. So ideally, it was just very evident that it's just not for children. And that's where shows like Family Guy and so forth would play. Whereas today, where you have streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime, mean that children can watch whatever they want, when they want. Platforms like TikTok, where your child could be aimlessly scrolling and anything can come up. You just don't know what your child is watching or being exposed to. All of this, I believe, highlights that the influencers and faces of culture don't actually care about the younger generations, and that's why they are appearing much older and engaging in adult activities at a younger age, because who's really catering to that age group? The community that once took responsibility of the younger generation, even though they were not related to them in any way, has essentially died out. And the model that once saw the betterment of society through prepping children and making sure that people were intelligent and were watching like appropriate content, honestly has just been snubbed out. I don't want to villainize celebrities of today, but they are the face of culture and who many children would point to when they asked about their role model. If you asked me who my role model was as a child, I probably wouldn't have understood the question, but I definitely would have been able to point to who I admired and who I wanted to be like. For me, growing up, that was the Sugar Babes. They were a group here in the UK that me and my friends literally adored. The group did change their members a few times, but I'm specifically talking about Mattia, Keisha and Heidi. We would dance in our rooms just like them in hopes of one day being a group just like them. There was 3 of us, 3 of them. It just made sense at the time. We even looked like them similarly. We even did a fake tour by going to each of our family members' home to perform for them. But that's what kids do. They imitate in hopes of being like the models they are imitating. And for some people, that is why they are on the path that they are on in life. Michael Jackson was influenced by James Brown. James Brown was influenced by who he was influenced by, and so on and so forth. If I could sing, dance, and met the right people, perhaps I would have been a musician, at least pursued it the best I could. Nonetheless, those dreams did not live long, but I discussed role models today because there was a day I met up with a friend from work for the first time and someone was recording for a YouTube video. And so they came up to us and they asked the question, who is your role model? My first instinct was to think of my mother or my sister, but as my colleague was first to answer, she replied, Michael Jackson. So instantly I assumed that the answer was meant to be a celebrity and that was the so-and-so correct answer, but it wasn't my genuine answer. And so when it was my turn, I also said Michael Jackson, which was not bad as we highlighted his charity work and his message about making the world a better place. By some estimates, he donated over $500 million to charity over the course of his life. Now, the main reason I decided to do this video essay was as a result of J. Cole's song, No Role Models. It's one of those songs that when I listen to it, I garner a new understanding of what the song is saying. And I'm at a place now where I believe he claims we have no good role models today, and he would define himself as a poor role model. I would argue that he recognizes Martin Luther King and Dr. Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as good role models, and the same models don't exist today. It's difficult to establish what a good role model is today when standards of morality has shifted so much, but we can recognize what is not the best example. J. Cole also highlights this by reminiscing on the times when he didn't use foul language and degrade women to sexual objects. Like J. Cole in his song, I couldn't think of a good role model today. And I realised that a lot of celebrities wouldn't see themselves as role models either.
As far as like you have your boy bands and your Britney Spears and your NSYNCs that want to be role models to kids and things like that, which is cool or whatever, but you know, that's their business, but that's not real and that's not how the world is.
How do you feel about, like, because you have young fans like that and your lyrics are pretty explicit.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
You know what? I'm realizing that I don't have to deal with it. I'm not their parents. I can
As I say, not as I do. Because you have a message and you want people to hear that message, but not necessarily to emulate.
Right. I don't want anybody to follow me whatsoever. I don't want to argue. What I want you to do is to listen. And I'm telling you, in my album, in the movie, in this.
If everyone trying to look at like us as role models, don't look up to us, please. And we're telling you that, bro. Go to your local masjid. Look up to your imam, please.
It's important to note that language can be fluid and change over time. And I believe when celebrities are saying they are not role models, they are arguing that their target audience are not children. And of course, they don't want to be put in the box of what is appropriate for children. And if it so happens that children like their music, that's a completely different thing in comparison to someone who makes music for children specifically. But as discussed, a role model could be anyone, and therefore anyone could be modelled after, and that includes celebrities. And by that definition of what a role model is, the question then becomes, are celebrities good or bad role models? Here are a few case studies that I had a look at. So my first case study is Eminem. Eminem has been criticised for misogyny, homophobia, and being violent because of the nature of his lyrics. I mean, they tended to be quite explicit, which is probably why they were censored all the time, and his albums had parental advisory. He was also clearly under some kind of influences, if you understand. I wouldn't call him the best role model, and I can understand why he would reject calling himself one. This is not to say all celebrities are like this, but it is to show that people did look up to or love him, which is why he made songs like Stan and The Real Slim Shady, which highlight the obsession people had over him and would literally do everything he said and done. He also has a song called Role Model, which literally encompasses why he's a terrible role model. I don't know how genuine the lines or the lyrics are, but it's pretty self-explanatory. One thing I probably could say about Eminem is that he didn't fret from highlighting controversies elsewhere, that being ridicule in the Catholic Church for the young boy situation, recognizing the double standards as a white man in a black industry, and his boldness to just be himself. He was not as dumb as he sometimes appeared, and so I'll give him that. He would probably argue that he brought nothing new in terms of him not being the first to swear or rap about the things that he did, so why should he censor himself? But to recognize the influence he had and still try and absolve himself from any responsibility is just honestly silly in my opinion. Also, I wanted to add that for someone who denied being a role model, his videos were enticing to children. I don't know if that was just his Slim Shady persona, but the use of cartoons and cosplay are things that would attract a child's attention. So as much as parents should watch their children and watch what they're doing, someone like Eminem should be able to recognize how his videos draw children in and place them in situations where they're listening to vulgar and inappropriate lyrics.
But I get a lot of friends because I have respect for women, ultra respect for women.
Tupac had a little different perspective, which was do as I say, not as I do, which with all due respect doesn't make sense at all. And this is coming from someone who thinks highly of him. I say this because if you truly believe in what you say, surely you would walk in it. And yes, no one is perfect. And yes, we can learn from our mistakes and develop a new perspective. But it sounds like he was trying to live a double life to keep this gangster persona as well as an activist image. And they clearly conflicted. For instance, how can you in one breath esteem women and in the next call them BITCHESs and HOESs? It just doesn't make sense. It's also worth noting he was associated with really bad controversies, including rape. I'm not discussing the case, but I'm sure it was cleared at least socially. I'm not sure if it was cleared in terms of court, but it's clearly something that's not readily associated with his legacy, but it was quite a big thing at the time. I do find it interesting that he discussed the case publicly and answered the questions of the press after the trial. I'm not going to say that this makes him innocent, but it reflects he was not willing to just accept the circumstances that he found himself in and what he perceived as an injustice. He is quite murky as an example, which is why I think he said, do as I say, not as I do. If we are to look at what he said, he did hold women, specifically black women, at a high esteem. We see this in songs like Baby Don't Cry, Brenda's Got a Baby, and Keep Your Head Up. He highlights the trauma women have experienced and the importance of men recognizing their contributions to these traumas and the importance of them protecting and supporting women. To some, he is perceived as an activist because of his message for social change. He spoke about poverty, the detriment of the war on drugs policy, and the advancement of the black community. He was able to release several albums, and just the mere fact of accomplishing the stardom that he did in such a short amount of time is also very impressive. However, I don't want to undermine that in other ways he was a terrible role model. He degraded women, had violent lyrics, encouraged smoking trees, and was arguably in a public gang war. I find it interesting he accuses Spike Lee for having adult scenes in his movies because of the way it, quote unquote, portrays black women. But he literally has a song called I Get Around with half-naked women in the video. His endorsement of violence is honestly what I think eventually led him to his fate.
I am not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. I am paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. Parents should be role models. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I should raise your kids.
So this advert appeared in my research for role models quite a few times. It stars Charles Barkley, an NBA player in the early 90s who played alongside huge basketball stars like Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal. Barkley was surrounded by controversy due to an incident where he retaliated against a racist fan by spitting at the heckler. However, he missed and caught an 8-year-old girl, as well as other incidents including drunken bar fights. This did taint his image as a good example to young fans, and his response was this commercial emphasizing that he should not be regarded as a role model. This commercial sparked debate on whether athletes and celebrities should be regarded as role models. I wanted to include this because it pretty much summarizes everything altogether. Barkley's teammate Karl Malone responded to this commercial that Barkley is a role model whether he likes it or not. He highlights the fact that he, being Barkley, knows he is a role model, and that is why he has chosen to endorse certain products, because people are likely to buy what he endorses. I think this hits the nail on the head because it recognizes that celebrities are clearly aware they are role models from the stance that people copy them and see them as examples. However, if they accept this point of view, then they have to accept the responsibility too. Of course, role models are not limited to celebrities, and I think Barkley's point was that celebrities should not be the first point of representation. However, they represent wider society and contribute to a child or an adult's future aspirations. Circling back to Bandura's social learning and focusing on the last stage, which is motivation. If you are hugely successful in what you do, being a basketball player, a singer, or an actress, people will want to be like you, and this is initiated by imitation. As discussed, language has changed, and if we look at how the majority perceive what a role model is, it's usually the person that is the best in the field and has high moral standards. And I focus on the high moral standards part because I think that's why a lot of celebrities like to fall back from the title of role model, because they're more likely to be criticized. And we're living in a time now where celebrities' business is literally for everyone to see. There was once upon a time where people's secrets remained secrets, whereas now we know a lot, and I think because of that fear of being exposed, a lot of celebrities kind of just push away from this title of role model.
So it's like being a role model, I appreciate everybody that sees me as their role model, but god damn, all the pressure. I feel like I cannot slip up. And when I do slip up, I feel such huge disappointment at the amount of people that I've let down. When if I didn't have anybody to let down, like if everybody just saw me as, oh yeah, she's just funny, I could just get away with murder.
I can see why many step away from the title, as it usually comes with a fall from grace at some point. It's better to say I never called myself a role model, which still comes with critique anyway, than to say you said you were a role model and never be able to return to the pinnacle that society placed you on because of a mistake or just living the life that you want to. In light of this, I decided to search who fall into the categories of what a good public role model was. On the list that I found, and interestingly, none of them are alive today, the top role models were Albert Einstein, Dalai Lama, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and Marilyn Monroe, which I was a little surprised about, not in a bad way, just I didn't think the list was going in that direction. But I think it's fair to say these people were advocates of some sort of injustice and preached a message of fairness or unity, or just showed sheer intelligence. We don't really see people becoming famous for things like this today. Fame is given to people for some of the most fickle things, so there is a shift in culture in that regard too. Today's celebrities are either exceptional in their field, have a likable character, or just absolutely stunning to look at. Even if we look at someone like Marilyn Monroe, who was beautiful and had controversy around her with the president, there was more to her than that young people could aspire to. And although she may have had negative associations, she also had amazing examples to her character. Malone says that we are not saints, but we can try our best to be good examples. This is not to say celebrities don't do good things today, but it does tend to be to a response to accusations of not doing anything, or it appears as though their hands has been forced. It doesn't appear authentic or heartfelt. It's almost like back then people did humanitarian work and the camera happened to be there, whereas now people do humanitarian work because the camera is there. And oftentimes we can see through that. I would conclude this video by saying that from the lowest person to the most famous, we are all role models and we all have someone watching us that would like to be similar to us one day or adopt characters or parts of our personality that they adore. You are a role model whether you like it or not, and I think we should be responsible for this, especially when you're in the public eye. As we've lent into a more individualistic society, I think that causes a lot more selfishness where people don't care about who they influence or who their actions may affect because they're all for the fame, they're all for the money, they're all for the riches. And the reality is children are the future generation, and who are we encouraging them to be if we choose not to care what they adopt from us?
My then 4-year-old copying my moves, copying my music videos and stuff like that. I was just like, nah. And it wasn't just because it was my daughter. It was like, this is everyone's daughter.
Right.
And I remember, going in and saying, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to influence people's daughters to be sexual. My child is 4.
Right.
And so there are other 4-year-olds and just little girls who are big fans of mine.
Yes.
Why am I selling this to them?
Yes. Yes.
If you made it to the end of this video, I really, 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 really appreciate you. It's taken me over a year to make this video. It's absolutely insane. And every single part, every single video I put together myself. And so I'd really appreciate if you like this video and share it. I would love to continue the conversation in the comment section. I can see and understand that there's some elements that I would have loved to just develop into more, but because of time, I just couldn't do that. But I would love to discuss it in the comment section. Thank you so much. Love you. Bye.